you heard of Gacha Life? No? Consider yourself lucky, I'm serious.
There's some scary Gacha Life glitches that people have found. Apparently some of these glitches can hack your screen and turn it off.
Then Gacha Life. Now, I've actually played some Gacha Life before this.
Step 8, Reznov! Freedom! For you, Mason!
Innocent stories made in Gacha Life hide some of the most disgusting content you'll see on the internet. The perfect male fantasy, the M1911.
Oh, they're loot boxes in a kid's game.
So, Gacha. No, not the form of gambling found in games like Genshin Impact and Zenless Zero, where people simulate what it's like to have your prostate touched for the first time. How many fingers are in? Am I deep yet? Yep, definitely touching it. After getting a new exclusive anime girl to add to their collection, that everyone views as OP before they get nerfed into oblivion, and are then seen as useless, and the people that spent thousands of dollars then start investing in another anime girl, only for the cycle to repeat again. No, not that gacha. But if you still play Genshin Impact religiously, you are a loser, but if you log in just to do your dailies and that's it, I hold some respect for you. But no, the gacha I'm talking about is Gacha Life, released in October 2018. And to this day on the Google App Store has received over 100 million downloads and 3.85 million reviews, and has had many sequels and spin-offs like Gacha Life 2, Gacha Club, Gacha World, and a number of predecessors like Gacha Studio, Anime Gacha, and Neko Gacha that seemingly laid the groundwork for the later Gacha games. But you can certainly say Gacha Life is very well known, especially towards its target audience, which is the drooling, iPad-using, non-tax-paying children. But not only is it popular for them to install on their iPads, it's also popular on platforms like here on YouTube and TikTok, where the stories in most of those videos were, well, to be honest, most are better than High Guardian Spice and Big Mouth, but they are something. I remember seeing some of them in my recommended in 2020, and it was like a compilation for all their previous episodes they made in this series, and it was back when YouTube had that little yellow line where you could see when an ad was about to play, and it was absolutely crammed with them. They went over to that video's monetization page and placed an ad every minute, not knowing YouTube has a cooldown for ads. But some toddler somewhere was making absolute bank, probably on the same level as some of the kids making Roblox games to this day. And you can't shit on them, they're learning early. However, Gacha Life is still around to this day, and still just as popular. But although the game, the community, and the content surrounding it are well known and rejoiced around most daycares, it has come with a number of critiques and problems over the years. Some that can certainly be said to be concerning. But first, what is Gacha Life?
No vote, 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 never mind.
Gacha Life, the app, is described as a role-playing game. And the word gacha, it comes from Japan, where the word gacha refers to the small toys sold in vending machines, kind of like Kinder Eggs, where they had the little capsule inside till people started choking on them, and things haven't been the same since. Good times, but gacha refers to his little vending machines where you can get a random toy, kind of like Genshin Impact. It actually has a mechanic like this, where you can spend in-game currency to get random items. But the gameplay of Gacha Life is actually quite simple. Its main focus is character creation and creating animations within the studio element. You can basically customize everything about your character, from appearance, to occupation, to personality type, to relationship, and you can also use the items you got from your gacha to customize the backgrounds for your animations. There is also mini games within the game which you can play to get the in-game currency, but the main focus is the animations. Animations like music videos, normal animations telling stories, and of course memes. Now, to make a Gacha Life animation, let's assume suitable for YouTube, and assume you're actually interested, it's actually quite complicated. And I'm impressed some of these content creators have to go through this just to make these videos. I'm probably prouder than their parents right now. But at least on the original Gacha Life app, It's not as simple as going into the studio mode, moving your character around, and the animation's done. All you need to do is export it. No, it's not that simple. The studio mode within Gacha Life doesn't even have a timeline, so you actually have to screenshot each frame or every time something changes, and then you have to throw all of them into an editing software and set the duration of each screenshot to resemble a frame to create that animated look, which if they're doing things like lip syncing is going to be a lot of screenshots. And some of the animations I saw probably took a lot of time, and you've got to give it to them. They've done a lot more with their iPads than anything I was doing at their age. But once again, many of these videos get millions of views. If you are struggling right now, all you need to do is dial back your intelligence, probably through lobotomy, download Gacha Life and come up with a story that is the equivalent of Twilight Slop, fully animate it and then upload an entire series, and then you can invest all of it into a Vanguard S&P 500 and you will not need to work ever again, just live off the dividends. A lot of these are understandably made by children, so obviously I shouldn't be expecting HBO Band of Brothers level of story and character development, but some are quite questionable, and some sound like the plot for the next hit spring anime. But the main contention and cause for concern for these kids that are interested in Gacha Life and the content surrounding it is the animations themselves and the community orbiting it.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
So when you boot up Gacha Life for the first time, yes, I actually had to download the app for this video, but every time you launch the app you are greeted with the terms of service you have to accept to continue. And probably the most important line in the TOS is where it mentions Gacha Life is intended for players of all ages, and as such we request all content created, edited and uploaded using the app is suitable for all ages. So they basically don't want a repeat of what people were doing back in Halo 3's theater mode. But why would they need such a clause in their terms of service? Well, maybe because the thing that sentence is attempting to defend against is actually quite disappointingly prevalent in the community. And just as a precursor to give you additional context to set the scene of this community that we are about to jump into the bowels of, but for people that are hardcore gacha enjoyers, you may notice on top of the fact it's almost your bedtime, that you may have experienced a Mandela effect. Because some people that use the gacha franchise's apps swears there used to be a messaging service, but there is no messaging service found on any of the apps to this day. But it did used to exist. So I guess it's not really a Mandela effect, I guess. But you could chat with other people using the app, and there were multiple servers you could join to do this. But as said, it doesn't exist anymore. And this feature has been removed from most of their apps. But what was the reason behind the removal of this feature in 2020 across all of their platforms? Well, it was down to what was happening in those chats, specifically inappropriate behaviour on a kids game, with things like NSFW roleplaying, just general rule breaking like the sharing of glitches, and the creation and sharing of things like Gacha Heat, which we will get into in a minute. But due to this happening on their platform, they fully removed this feature from most of their apps to prioritize player safety, which is a reasonable crash out and actually a respectable measure taken by the dev team. Unfortunately, VRChat devs are not on the same level and won't delete their entire game, but even with the chat feature completely removed, this game and the community surrounding it would still unfortunately harbour a negative reputation, and that was down to things like Gacha Heat. Now, as I said, one of the main problems is the animations created on the game, and that's where the term Gacha Heat gets involved. Gacha Heat, as described on the Internet Matters page on Gacha Life, which is a website dedicated to providing children and parents with information regarding online safety, it describes Gacha Heat as content created on the Gacha Life platform, which is then uploaded to other platforms like YouTube and TikTok. This content involves inappropriate and offensive themes, including things like sexual violence or other related subjects. So basically, Gacha Heat is people creating NSFW content within Gacha Life and then uploading it to different platforms for everyone to see. Now, you would think this would not be allowed on those platforms, or at least it would be heavily moderated. On the TikTok side of things, as seen in the Visual Venture video on the same topic, on TikTok, if you type the term in, you are met with an error. You can't find any videos under that search term, but there are ways around it. If you do in fact find one of these videos, they will have an assortment of tags that people now use to associate with this type of content. And if you click on one of those tags, there you are. There is a whole collection of it. On YouTube, however, it's much worse and a lot more blatant. At least TikTok tried to do something about it by preventing you from searching it, but on YouTube you can just straight up search it and there it is. And there isn't anything being done about it, because most of the time all the creators do is paint their characters' clothes the same as their skin colour, so it looks like they are completely naked, and YouTube probably doesn't see that as a problem, even though it heavily insinuates sexual themes, or in some they're just straight up acting it out. All here on YouTube, by the way. If you come across any of these videos, definitely report it for the love of God. But much to my horror, many of these videos have millions of views and some even have ads playing on them. So they're potentially making a profit from this, and I don't think I found a single one that was age restricted. And all I saw was a bunch of sperm cells in the comments spouting absolute dribble. But there's also a problem with things like gore, where animations are created like people being curb stomped to the point where they are embedded into said curb with heavy and extensive detail, or stories with very mature settings. Once again, this is a kids game, and most of the content is mainly watched by kids, and they can access this content easily. And it gets even worse, because Gacha Life faces the same problem that Roblox and VRChat faces, which is grooming and predatory behaviour that you could say is only amplified by the explicit content being spread. As due to the creation and prevalence of things like Gacha Heat, it led to the creation of things like Discord servers that have been created for the sole purpose of spreading such content, and for things like NSFW roleplay. Unfortunately, yes, this leaves kids vulnerable to things like predatory behaviour, where there are countless stories and videos describing such events occurring from predators using the gacha community to get access to victims. And some of the gacha creators themselves have been accused of the same thing, like with the case of Len Totally, who was in his 20s and was creating gacha content and then removed themselves from the internet entirely after it was found out they were communicating and performing disgusting activities with those underage within their own community. Toastify did a really good video covering the entire situation, but it's a case of many Gacha Life faces, but once again, this isn't seldom to Gacha Life. It's the same issue that games like Roblox and VRChat face, and there is a version of Gacha Life in Roblox that some people from the Gacha Life community have migrated over to, which is Gacha Online RP, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that they've moved over there. However, with all the problems I've just discussed, the creator of Gacha Life, Lunami, has done their best to combat the problems within the community, from removing chats to removing certain poses and clothing options from the game that were heavily used in this NSFW content in an attempt to help mitigate these issues. But they cannot control what other people are uploading onto different platforms. But due to all of this, it's left the gacha game and community with somewhat of a negative reputation, even though the majority of the gacha community itself strongly detests the fact that Gacha Heat itself is a thing and disavows the creation of such content. It's still around and still getting a lot of attention to this day. Due to this and some level of toxicity within the community, gacha content creators themselves are no longer uploading gacha or are leaving to upload different content, and some don't want anything to do with gacha in general anymore. However, I will admit, even with the negative parts of this game, some of the creations within the gacha community that obviously aren't on the heretic level are honestly impressive, especially with some of the limited tools they were given. They were able to make really impressive content, even if they had to screenshot 1,000 times just for 30 seconds of clean animation. And yeah, some are making a good profit from their work and gaining skills which will probably help them later on in life. Yeah, what are you doing with your life? Get that VTuber off your phone background, buddy, or I'll use the J-Slur and flash the worst of your fears, a job application. Anyway, it's just certain individuals and creators have poisoned the well, so to speak, and it's unfair that people creating quality gacha content are met with this negative reputation, even though, as always, it isn't the entire community doing this. But for the love of God, YouTube needs to do something about it on their platform. I hate the birds. They're just straight up yapping. I'm going to be completely honest, when looking at this community I went in expecting the absolute worst. And yeah, I did find some terrible things orbiting this game and community, but looking further in you also find people creating and sharing, as I said before, some honestly impressive animations, and you can tell those creators put great effort and dedication towards their work. Even if some are sperm cells on an iPad and some need to stop taking notes from Twilight when creating their animations. Yes, it's worrying how much terrible content is orbiting this game, but I do believe the game creators and community itself have somewhat tried to combat this, but they can only do so much. Other platforms need to assist for this problem to be completely resolved. But if you do have a kid, you probably don't, you're watching this, for the love of God, maybe occasionally check what they're doing on the internet. I think some would be shocked at the fact their child has probably made millions in ad rev making Gacha Live TikTok compilations. But yeah, that's all I had to say, and bye bye.